Now, we've heard a lot throughout the day about good governance, compliance, maybe not too much about the rule of law, but don't worry, we're going to make sure you have that as the final word. And indeed, a great way to bring all of our sessions to a close today. We need to be looking at better risk management, we need to be looking at trust, compliance and transparency and regulatory environment in this industry. And a gentleman who's going to give us his perspective on this through a fine legal eye on this, I want to welcome now the legal counsel from British American Tobacco to join us, Mr. TAJAMAL SHAH.
Hi, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
And I'm sorry, I'm going to take a minute of your time if you don't mind. There is some feedback forms on your seat. You're probably sitting on them. So please, if I can ask you to just shuffle around a little bit. I don't want to take any attention away from you, but before you go, please, do give us your comments. The organisers will value that very much. Sorry, that's end of it. It's all yours now.
Thank you very much. I know it's been a long day. We're approaching towards the end. I won't take my allocated 30 minutes. I'll try to be as quick as possible. Just want to start off on a light story. There was a discussion going on between a surgeon and an accountant and a lawyer, which is the oldest profession. The surgeon said that God created Eve from a rib of Adam, so medicine has to be the oldest profession. And the accountant responded by saying, but however, before Adam and Eve were created, an orderly universe was created from chaos. So hence, accountancy must be the oldest profession. The lawyer just stood there smiling and replied, well, who created the chaos? So I'm going to try not to create some chaos today, and just to give, I'm not going to discuss the law, or try not to discuss the law. It's very difficult for a lawyer not to do that. But the thought process which needs to prevail in an organization in order to realize the potential legal risks which could lead to lawsuits and the other areas of topic I'm going to cover. My agenda is slightly diversified, the topics which have been given. One is to talk about lawsuits, the other is about in-house counsel versus external counsel, and then touch on legal costs and fees. But like I said, the importance of what I'm going to discuss today is not the laws themselves. I will touch on them, but it's the thought process. What is the mindset which prevails within an organization when it comes to dealing with the legal risks which could potentially lead to a lawsuit? Now, what is a lawsuit? The Oxford Dictionary defines a lawsuit as an argument or a disagreement which is referred to a court of law to be settled. This implies that the nature of the argument or the disagreement has a legal back to it. It's a legal nature. Now, what do we mean by that? Rights and obligations are created by a legal umbrella called a contract, or there are obligations which are imposed by law. So the important thing to understand for the management or internally for everybody is the rights and obligation which you are dealing with, are they protected under law? And if they are, then you need to ensure they're being complied with. Otherwise, there is a potential for a lawsuit being taken by a breach of contract or under law by a regulator or somebody else. Rights and obligations, as I said, this explains that you can have them mutually agreed in the form of an agreement. So it's all about relationships. We work as an organization and we create many relationships. I'm only going to talk about 3 relationships, and then this. A company is a legal entity, as everybody knows. It has the ability to create legal relationships. It creates a legal relationship with shareholders via a contractual, I'll explain that later on, or under legislation, certain obligations are placed which define the relationship. You can have the regulator and the company. There's 2 types. There's one that is created under legislation, or you could have self-regulation, which is more and more the norm in some jurisdictions. And the employees, the contract of employment and legislation. Let me now touch on the rights of shareholders. Briefly, what are they? As this picture tells you, it's not just the majority shareholders who have the rights. Every shareholder has a right. When management is acting, they must be acting in the interest of all shareholders. And that is important to understand, which means you need to understand what those rights are. So where do shareholders get their rights? The first thing is the constitution of the company. And that is generally encompassed in the memorandum and articles of association. It is up to the companies to define initially when they're set up what those rights are, but they're articulated in the articles of association. So as a guideline, management needs to understand what is stated within the articles of association, so you know what the rights are. What types of share you can issue, ordinary, preferred shares, and what are rights attached with that. So it's all about understanding the rights if you want to avoid a lawsuit. Obviously, there is change happening all the time, and there is provisions within the law which allows those rights to be changed, article of association to be amended. However, there is oversight provided by the regulators, which I'll talk about later on, to ensure that all shareholders are treated fairly, and if there are any amendments being made, they've been made keeping in view everybody who could be impacted, rather than the three-fourths majority determining what they would like to do. Legislation, just a quick view, the type of legislation that exists in Pakistan: Companies Ordinance, SCCP Act, Listing Regulation, and Code on Corporate Governance, which forms part of the listing regulations. These are the main rights which shareholders have. The first one obviously is the right to buy and sell shares. They are in a position to determine whether they want to have an ownership in the company. The right to information is an important right about disclosure. This allows them to make informed decisions regarding their investment, whether they want to keep investing in the company or they want to sell and move out. An important control mechanism, as far as the shareholders are concerned, who are the owners, is the right to vote and attend general meetings. A lot of the powers of the shareholders are exercised in that forum. So hence, they must have the ability to kick in action, bring about that forum, so they can ride those action, exercise their rights. Hence, they have the ability to call an EGM as well. Obviously, you don't want willy-nilly decisions being taken by small shareholders, so the law does prescribe a minimum threshold when these rights can be exercised. Otherwise, they presume everything is being done correctly by the management. The overwhelming right which needs to be kept in mind is how shareholders are treated. They are, at the end, the owners of the organization, and they should be treated equally, fairly, and should not be oppressed. There are various mechanisms in place under law which allows the members to revert to. For example, you have Section 90, then you have Section 263, which allows the SCCP to look into the affairs of a company if they are not in line with what they should be, and take action. I'm not going to discuss the different provisions which exist under the various legislation, but the important thing to know is that everybody who has a right as a shareholder has different forums which he can utilize to enforce those rights or allow an investigation to take place. So as an organization, as management, we should be aware we have the shareholder over us looking what is happening within the organization. Why do we exist? Why do we do things? It's all about the investment of the shareholders. We're there to create value for the shareholders, and we can do this bestly by enhancing shareholders' confidence in our organization, and that means looking after good corporate governance. Rights of employees. This cartoon explains the ambiguity that can exist in a contract. I'll leave you to decide who's the employer and employee in this relationship.